Hacking our sick minds cannot be a pleasant process. It doesn't feed our ego. It is a total revision of our whole past lives and values. It is deep analysis of our desires through which we're able to identify the sick programming of our mind in the clearest of ways. It is our desires that reveal to us where our obsessions lie. What we obsessed over is what we believe is going to be our consolation and soothe the pain of the present moment. Of course, it's self-deception and a mind trap. After we reach what seemed so alluring at first, we stop seeing it as a consolation because we realize that it did not, in fact, make us feel any better in any conceivable way. It did not bring fulfillment or a sense of calm. Therefore, the most painful thing in the deep analysis of this endless chase is the realization that this chase was, and always will be, completely absurd. Because as soon as we achieve or own that new thing or person, we discover that we are more miserable than ever before. This is the early stage of our inner work. The realization that this exhausting race is an illusion. If a person feels extreme rage at this stage after hearing that his or her obsession with achieving their desires is a reflection of their torn psyche, he or she will not continue to do the inner work. The person makes that decision very early on. He or she will find a conventional psychologist and do talk therapy, or go do constellation therapy, or whatever else it might be that can grant them an illusory sense of relief. It will dry the wound on the surface, but that dried crust would only help to build more pressure inside the pus-filled abscess. So you can say people who go into this deep work have already made that decision for themselves. They know that owning something or someone will not provide relief, but different material possessions as well as relationships will be the consequence of that inner work. However, these obsessions and relationships will not matter as much as they used to. They will just feel like a natural result of our inner state, not the end-all be-all of life. That's why at the early stage of therapy, a person who has matured enough for this type of work feels a real deep sense of relief. During the second stage, however, that's when a setback takes place. During this stage, we do the so-called multi-position processing. It's when we look at a situation from the perspective of different selves involved in a particular traumatic situation. And that's when it seems like the world is turning inside out. Everything becomes transparent and crystal clear. You finally start understanding the actions and motives of people that you were blaming your whole life. But then during the processing, we go back to our own selves and find out that we also do the exact same thing that we blamed people around us for doing. This phase can be regarded as a culmination of the most painful realization we're trying so hard to resist with every fiber of our being. You cannot idealize or demonize your parents any longer. You just clearly see the mechanic of their logic as if it were on a map. You can find a place inside your mind for your desire to blame or find excuses. You just understand the mechanics. You just know. You are aware. This is when your whole body and mind start to resist as hard as they can. It is all because they lose the power to feel superior to someone else. When someone wronged me, I'm hurt. I'm a victim. And in that status, I feel power over my abuser. If I'm being honest with myself, I realize that I don't have any other identification than that, however absurd it might sound at first. But in reality, I don't know who I am if I'm no longer accusing or excusing someone else. I don't have a sense of self outside of the system of labels and judgments, and I get really scared. I'm terrified that outside of the system of judgment, it's like I don't even exist. Turns out, I always need someone else on the outside to be able to identify myself. And that other person can only exist in my system of values as someone I judge, criticize, forgive, blame, fight, and reconcile with. And all of a sudden, I learned that my whole life has been and is about that way of communicating with the world. I cannot perceive myself outside of that paradigm. All of my feelings are connected with that interpretation of reality. What feelings am I going to feel once I get out of this perverted collective game? I don't know. And because I don't know, I'm afraid. The unknown looks like an abyss. I cannot view this unknowingness as good for me because I've never been there. I've never experienced it. This is the stumbling block that makes 10 to 20% of students leave. It's either us initiating to take a break for a month or two and then get back to do the work, or if the person is being exceptionally aggressive, then it's clear that they don't have any intention yet. So it's better to just say goodbye. But it happens extremely rarely. As a norm, all the things that have been brought up to the surface work itself out within the 2 months or so, and after that the person experiences their desire to continue. It is because the state that he or she experienced, where they were able to be so crystally honest with themselves, they cannot unsee it. He or she wants to go back to that place where he or she, for as short as it may be, were honest about their own feelings and felt at least a little bit in love with life. He or she saw their real self that they were longing for so long. However, if a person does not wish to be utterly honest with the continuity of generational beliefs and how masterful and deceitful we can be in the relationship with ourselves and the world, if he or she are literally tying themselves in a knot, trying not to see their true feelings, he or she would just not be in this space. If he or she are still obsessed with the idea of building their veneer of fake self-image, using smoke and mirrors, trying to prove to everyone that they have a picture-perfect family, that their parents are just true angels, and how smart, beautiful, successful, and rich they are, he or she will just not be in this space. Even when faced with this information, their first thought would be to just close the video immediately, or even go as far as to write an aggressive comment or like a private message, to then go on and continue building this facade of successful life and prove to everyone around them that he or she are worthy. If someone doesn't have the intention yet to work out the relationship they have with themselves, any sliver of analysis of their self-programming is going to terrify them. They will avoid it like the plague. But people who are truly sick of living in the hell of their own making, they have already formed this intention to get out of that hell. Their exhaustion from trying to chase, prove, pretend, and being physically ill of that makes it so that the person already have a formed intention, sometimes without being consciously aware of it. That's why this inner work cannot be scary or exhausting for these people, as it may appear at first glance. So if your resistance and fear are so overwhelming, then there's just going to be no value in pushing yourself into the space against your own will. Life is a teacher that will lead us to having to strip away all the beliefs of our ego anyway. This is our evolution. This is our path to integrated consciousness. Without it, we're deeply miserable and lost, and can only go into destruction of ourselves and people around us.